read?
Sure.
I summaried last time. I can do whatever, but.
Do you want me to summary? Who was supposed to summary? I don't remember.
Who did it last time?
I did.
Okay.
And then I think I did it the time before.
Okay. And I'll do it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready?
Yep.
Okay, I have 4 questions, 4 main questions. Does that sound right?
Yep.
Okay. Having completed the book, that's the first question, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Having completed the book, how has your understanding and perception increased on the process of international policy and law? I'll start. I just said that I've been enlightened on how special interest groups can influence the UN. I didn't know that before. I didn't know that it was grassroots type people that were non-government organizations. I thought it was just government that was involved. So that was one thing that I was enlightened on. When the UN accepts declarations into policy, it may not bind countries, but it does heavily influence those countries. And then it also appears that money talks with the lobbying that occurs. And I now understand how the U.S. will pull documents from the UN to influence in court.
Wow, that was really good. Yeah, so, oh, you can go.
I was just saying that mine was nothing that detailed. I just kind of had said how I had absolutely no idea what a huge process of international policy and the law was. And I felt like after I read that book, I understood it a lot more even than my years of government and history classes that kind of bored me. But he did kind of a good job of explaining the process. But I really did learn a lot. But honestly, still a lot of it was really confusing to me. So, John, you sounded brilliant there with your answer.
Wow, I didn't think that's nice.
Yeah, Nicole, I agree. Like, parts of the book I still didn't understand. Like, I've only taken one political science class like years ago, and so I don't really remember like how I didn't even remember like how a bill became a law. So I'm glad we went over that this week. But I think just going through Richard's experience, I took a little bit of a different turn, and I just saw how Richard took the steps to try to influence the international policy and law. So yeah, I don't think I still understand a lot of what actually happened.
I know. It's a little tough.
And yeah, just so you guys know, I lost all of my paperwork and all of my notes on my computer because my computer crashed this morning on my laptop. So, but that's pretty much what I thought. Number one, it was confusing until you got more like halfway into the book. And then to me, it like explained it a little bit more. But I was with John. I felt like I didn't realize how much organizations had an impact on the UN and how much influence. And I love that one part, and I don't know if you guys remember that one part where it says, like, the power is in the influence. And if you have the money, then that's where the influence is, which I thought was really sad, but true.
Yeah, it seems like even from after reading it, it seems like even to me, it doesn't seem like it's ever going to stop. Like the opposition will always continue until they get their way. They're not going to stop until they get their way.
Right.
And as long as they have enough money funding them.
It seems like Richard did so much and it made a dent. Like, still, just like that year and that period of time, they still like were pro-family. But then just a couple of years later, then it just diminished, it feels like.
Yeah. Okay, next one.
Yeah.
What role did you see the Lord playing in Professor Wilkins' efforts to advocate for the families of the world? And what lessons did you learn for your own efforts?
Want me to go? Mine is kind of long, and I don't know if you already read it because I posted it, but I just said the Lord was right there with Professor Wilkins' effort to advocate for families every single step of the way. The first time that I noticed the Lord playing a huge part in his life was when he told Sue Barton, told Professor Wilkins that he was nominated to speak. He told him he was nominated to speak, but don't get too excited. You have to try out. And he said like immediately he felt for sure he was going to be speaking. And I don't think that was him just being arrogant. I think that was the Spirit speaking to him, just letting him know, you're going to be speaking. And then he was also with him as he was really nervous and anxious about giving his speech. He felt the Spirit with him throughout that. He also talked about how every time just kind of throughout the whole entire book, I noticed that he kept referring to scriptures. He kept talking about something he was studied or hung up on or something he didn't know how to phrase right, and then he was always prompted to go look in the scriptures and again, and also prompted to call his wife for comfort. And I feel like the Lord was helping him get those promptings. And then the simple lesson that I learned, the second part of that question, was just to kind of always remember to follow those feelings and promptings that I receive, no matter how little or big they are. But just something like as silly as something with your kids or something with, a little problem you have or school, just to remember to follow his example and to search the scriptures and prayer for answers with little things and big things, and just to always listen to the Spirit. So that's kind of what I put.
That's awesome, Nicole. I was so impressed with Richard. Like, I could not do what he did. It just feels like he was so sleep deprived and food deprived. Like, he didn't eat for a couple days or like something like that because he was just so wrapped up in like all this writing and stuff. And I could not do that. But I felt like the Lord was there, giving him that energy, that motivation. He had other people giving him that, but like without the strength of the Lord, he could not have done that. And I also noticed how he still tried his best to keep the Sabbath day holy by going at least to sacrament meeting and by praying and thinking about God's will over his own will. And I also think, yeah, as Nicole said, the Lord blessed him with the words to say, just like at the last minute writing that really, like he had a couple hours to write this speech or paper or whatever, but he only got it done in a short amount of time because that's all he had. But because he was using the proclamation, which was God's will, he was able to do it and to deliver the speech. So what I took away from that was if something is hard, it doesn't mean that it's not supposed to happen, if that makes sense. Because I guess in my life, it's like, oh man, this is really hard. Maybe God doesn't want me to do it or something. But he still had to work so hard himself. But it was still the right thing to do, and I commend him for doing that.
Okay.
I think that there's not much more I can add to that. I wrote pretty much the same things down, but I was thinking about this when you guys were talking, and I hadn't remembered until just now when you guys were talking about the sacrifice that he made. They were going to have their anniversary, and I just try to imagine what I would do in that situation. It might be very easy for me to say, oh, things don't get done at the UN, it's okay, that's not a big deal, I can go later. I think he even said something like he had a thought like that at the beginning of the book, But to make that sacrifice and to listen to that prompting, that was from the very start, I think, is when the Lord started prompting him. And he didn't know it. He just followed that prompting. It was a huge sacrifice to make, and I'm impressed, and I would hope that I'd be able to do that if I'm called on to do something like that myself.
Did you learn anything from it, John, that you want me to mention?
Well, just the sacrifice part about it. That if the Lord is Nicole already said it. If the Lord's prompting me, that I would listen to it, and actually do it. It's so easy to put things on the back burner and say, well, it can wait, In that situation, it clearly couldn't wait, but nobody knew that until he actually got into the thick of things, and he could have just forgot about it and did what he wanted to do with his wife and all that, but he didn't. He made that sacrifice. The one thing that I wrote down that we hadn't talked about that I learned was that things haven't changed much over the lifespan of Earth. The ideologies remain the same, and since we have the Book of Mormon, we have the power to dispel some of the Korihor Nehor type tactics, and that one person can make a difference.
And then the only thing I was going to add to that is the one thing that I looked at, not only was Professor Wilkins, did he listen to the Spirit from the Lord, like we've all talked about, but how the Lord even prepared the way even before Professor Wilkins, and how he prepared the way by inspiring President Hinckley with the family and the proclamation, and implementing that into our knowledge, like right before all of this happened with Richard. And then I also really like too how his wife was inspired to hand him that proclamation before he left, and told him to use it and to read back and look back upon it, which he did many times. So that was a big insight for me on that one, was with the family and the proclamation. But I also learned pretty much what you guys all said. For me, it was like what Nicole said, with following your promptings, no matter how little it may seem or things like that. So yeah, I really liked that a lot.
Me too. It was definitely all prompted. You could tell.
Yeah.
Made me wish that I would be able to go back and get a law degree or something, just because he was able to understand those things. And if I could just imagine myself being in front of that crowd, there's no way I'd make it.
Terrifying. I'd be terrified.
All right. Even though the book was largely about Richard Wilkins' experience, what important supporting roles did you see others playing in this account, and why is it important to recognize this?
So I'll go first on this one if you want. I think some of the other roles that people played, obviously his wife, I think was a huge role. He called her a lot. He needed her support. Also, I mentioned, the family and the proclamation, that she was inspired to give him that before he left. But so I think his wife played a huge role. I think that the lady, I think her name was Susan, that he worked with, I think that she played a huge role. I mean, she herself was inspired to even call him to invite him to the UN. So I think it really started with her too, and so she played a huge role in all. I mean, she brought all the equipment with, things like that. And it sounds kind of funny, but even the lady that kept upping his MasterCard and his debt, he kept calling her, and I think she played a role in that, because he couldn't have made all those copies without her. And also the girl that got booted when he was sharing that little room with her and writing up their speeches, and she got booted from speaking. I think that she had guts to jump in and speak when things were getting kind of out of hand at the UN, and she explained to them that she was, cut from the speeches. So I think it all had a play. Did you guys have any other insights on that?
I just had the same too. I had his wife, like she was his gentle pillar of strength, and he relied on her for guidance. And I thought it was so sweet that every time he was a little flustered or stressed, he thought to just call her, and she was always real calm. And I was just thinking, if I could ever be that calm wife, I'd probably be like, "You're right, that's crazy. What are you doing?" But it was a really good example, because she was just so calm, and she believed in him and motivated him, and she was probably freaking out a little bit on the inside, but she was like his rock. And then also, I said the same thing about Susan Roy Lance. She encouraged him and relied on his knowledge to advocate for the family. And you're right, she was, I'm sure, prompted, even if she didn't know it. And then I said the Lord also was a constant support in his own way, just I feel like, just being there as we all, like, I know for me, he's always there for me, and I always, you don't feel alone when you know he's right close. So even in some weird way, I'm guessing that he was a supporting role to him. So those are the three I had. But I agree with you, Tammy, with that lady that kept bumping him and mistaken him at first for someone else. I mean, that probably the Lord had a hand in that too, and that was just probably all part of the plan. So, okay.
When you think about it, I was thinking about the way that he was chosen to speak. That's just how the Lord works. He uses, I don't know if they're like not mistakes, but it's almost like his sense of humor to me, because he'll use things like that to make his things work. You know what I mean? What other circumstance would he have gotten chosen to speak if there wasn't a mistake on that on his credentials? I mean, for real, you
Yeah.
know? And it's kind of like a funny thing to me, because such a snake pit, but he got chosen. I was going to say one more person who supported him, who played roles, was the world leaders, the ones that were in favor of pro-family as well. Like as he bumped into them, you could tell that, at least I got the sense of feeling that it gave him a little bit more strength inside to rally for them.
Yeah, like the one that made the comment, "Where have you been?"
Yeah, that. Yep.
Yeah, that it made me think about that model that we learned about. Was it Brofeneurs or something? Ecological theory or model. And so like his wife, and then going out a little further, Susan, and then going out further was the guy who said, "Where have you been?" And at the end of the book, he goes back to that memory of where have you been, and then in like I think the appendix or whatever, it talks about other accomplishments that he made and other efforts. And so that statement really sunk deep into his heart. And still his wife like supported him, even though I guess they didn't even finish the house and other things that they did have goals to do. Personally, he just put more of his effort and everything into supporting the family. So it really is like not a worldwide, but like the systems theory, how a whole bunch of people from different systems really influence what we do.
It's true. I don't have words to say it, but talking about his wife being the support, I think that she was just as equal, if not more so, in his success than just him. And the thing about it that makes it so neat to me is that it's what he was advocating for. He was advocating for marriage and families, but
Mhm.
he couldn't have done that on his own. His wife completed that second part of him to be able to do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, next one.
Yeah.
Based on a sacred duty, what do you think we can do about it? Does the author implicitly or explicitly make realistic suggestions for ordinary citizens as well as those in a position of power and influence, and provide examples? What can we do about it?
I kind of when you read it, I think I answered it differently. I just said I really loved how the professor kept up. You remember when the ambassador at Istanbul asked him, "Where have you been?" after he spoke? So I was just thinking, and then he kept thinking of that question throughout it. And I was just thinking, where have you been? And we can be present, like we can be, even though we just have one little voice or we're just one person, and he was just one little person. Even at, just those little chips that he can make by giving a speech at a smaller one and moving to a bigger one and lobbying for bigger things. Just to be an advocate, I feel like is so important. And so I felt like when he was, what that question, what can ordinary citizens do? We can all have a voice, like in our family, in our church, in our community, maybe in our city, run for a bigger thing, or at least just fight and be an advocate for what we believe in. So sometimes everyone can look around and see that the family is not really being respected anymore, and it's not being as important, taken as seriously, or like I don't remember the details of that one part, but they were talking about the other lady who spoke. She was like promoting like more fast food restaurants and more daycare, so they could grab their kids and run and grab a hamburger at them out. And it was just like ridiculous to me. And it was so sad to think like everyone cheered and gave her like this big applause for that. And that's kind of how society thinks right now. Just kind of easy, make money, the family, grab a burger or whatever instead of the family time. So I don't know. To me, as a citizen or a mom or anything, as just a person, I would like to advocate for family, even in those little itty bitty ways. Anytime I have to open my mouth to talk about it, I will be more apt now to stand up and speak my mind and be an advocate in any way I can, I guess. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of how I was taking it.
Yeah, and he mentions a lot on page 105 about him going back to BYU, and one of the students that he has was really tech savvy or whatever, and they made up the NGO, what was it called, NGO Voice website because he wanted like ordinary citizens and people who have a voice get out and just type things on there. So that was one thing that he straight out said. But then he also mentioned around the same page that the website wasn't enough because people need to go to actual UN conferences and write papers and speak like he did. And so he kind of made this organization, I think, in the law school. I don't know, maybe you guys can help me, but it's at BYU, this organization where they actually take students to go to the conferences now. Did anyone hear about that?
I vaguely remember it, but I don't remember the details with it. But
Yeah, that's what it was.
okay.
Yeah, so I think that was really good because these law students are being educated on how they can be like Professor Wilkins, and so their occupation or purpose could be to do that. But then also we have sources like the internet for average people. So that's what I said.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we just don't know how. Like, I didn't even know any of this existed. Like, I didn't know that you could just go talk to the UN or, I mean, they have a process that you have to follow, but I didn't know any of that. The other thing I also mentioned is, and for us not knowing, that's our own fault. So we need to take the step and we need to be informed on the issues and the bills that are being passed within our own government and our own states, and just be involved. And I think that that's one way we can help. Another thing I mentioned too is like you said, Catherine, about how he went back and he recruited some of his students and things to help him, and he saw the gifts that they had and how that they could help what his cause was. And I think just like us, we have certain gifts that we can advocate for the family. So that was my thought. And the other thing I love too on those pages that you mentioned, Catherine, were how he said the price of liberty, it seems really is eternal vigilance. And it's not something we can just do once or twice a year or when we feel like it. It's like something, it's vigilance. Like we have to be vigilant about it and we have to be proactive, which I thought was really good. So, John, it looked like we skipped a question. Do you want to go over that or not? Or should
Which one? Which one was it?
The one right before this one. What are some consequences and risks of minimizing or eliminating family and religion from public policy?
Oh, I did not have that one. What was the question again?
It said, ponder your readings from a sacred duty. What are some consequences and risks of minimizing or eliminating family and religion from public policy?
Oh, I don't have that in my HOA notes, but I do have the answer for that one.
Yeah?
Oh, I have one. I don't want to take it from anybody, but I'm going to look it up. It's in my journal.
Oh, go ahead.
I have to open up my journal. Hold on. Okay. Where's it? Sorry, there's a lot in my journal here. But I do remember that question now.
John, do you want me to read mine while you're looking?
Yeah, please.
Okay, I just put there's several consequences and risks of minimizing or eliminating family and religion from public policy. The definition of sanctity in family can be destroyed. I felt like it's already kind of on its way of course, the definition of family being changed and possibly destroyed. And I just had a risk of minimizing family from public policy is that once we start accepting the way that this new definition and family policy has been changed, or how it's skewed, then we're losing the importance of respecting of the actual sanctity of family. Same goes with religion. If we take religion out of the policy, there's no gratitude shown for God. There's no gratitude shown to the country or respect to God. And I felt like as a world, it's crucial to believe in God that is with us on earth, even with the many different religions. As soon as we're told we can't believe in God or talk about God in schools or anywhere else, I feel like our whole world will suffer. So again, I don't know if I interpreted wrong, but that's what I kind of felt from it.
Yeah, that's really good. That was kind of similar to what I said. I also talked about moral relativism, which I think, John, maybe that was your paper.
Mm-hmm.
But I talked about how, yeah, like there will be just way more moral relativism. Like maybe one thing that might be bad to someone won't be bad to them, and it'll just be horrible. But also, I would just be really concerned for the children and what they're brought up in, because sure, like we know the importance of the family, but our kids that or future generations that will be raised, they won't. And so like because we won't really care about the children as much, we'll just give them fast food all the time. um, our society and economics and everything will just go downhill. The end.
I found mine. Um, Basically the same thing you guys said, and I did pick up on that moral relativism thing too. I said mothers and fathers need support and training to raise good children to be productive in society, which was, you just said that. Stripping them of these abilities causes more problems for everyone. Eliminating religion from public policy puts us as agents unto ourselves. It makes an environment where one person or a group of people see themselves as enlightened above all others, as those who know better. And then mankind has already proven itself that it's flawed. It's a flawed race, and God's laws are not flawed. It basically just reminds me of, I mean, it's the Book of Mormon. It's totally the Book of Mormon. It's just not physical. It's all we're still in battle. We're still having to do all these things. Like you said, Tammy, liberty is vigilance. We have to continue to be vigilant. You know, I'd like to be able to just kind of camp out, which I try to, but we can't. If we do, we're going to watch, like you said, Catherine, watch our children just kind of suffer from that. Can't do it. I think that's it.
Okay. Okay.
I'm glad it's you.
I know, I was like typing a lot this time.
As I was going through the whole thing, I was thinking, oh boy, this will be a fun one to summarize.
Yeah, so let's hope I do it justice. I apologize if I don't.
I'm sure you will.
Okay. So, do you have it marked on where the time is, Catherine, or whatever you need to do to tell her?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the summary. The UN highly influences governments. And I just shortened the NOGs. The NOGs have a huge impact on the UN. Power is in the influence, and if you have money, it seems you can get what you want. The girls, for us girls, it was confusing, like the whole government side of it and the issues, but John had a great definition, which I explained previously. That was his definition. The Lord was with Professor Wilkins the whole way. The Spirit prepared him by knowing he was going to speak. Also, he put the words and thoughts in his head. He prompted to call his wife. The Lord prepared the way with inspiring President Hinckley with the family, the proclamation. also having his wife put it in his hands right before he left. John learned that Professor Wilkins made a huge sacrifice, and we need to heed the Lord's promptings and sacrifice things for the Lord. Nicole and Tammy learned that we need to follow our promptings, no matter how little they may seem. We just need to always follow those. And Catherine learned that if something is hard, it doesn't mean it isn't supposed to happen. Other people that had an influence were definitely his wife. He always called her when he was stressed, and she was calm and motivated him. Same with her inspiration on the proclamation. Susan was prompted to ask him to go, and she brought the equipment needed. The Lord was constant support also throughout the whole process. The world leaders who were in favor of pro-family they sure helped boost his morale. The way that he was chosen to speak, like the mistake that was on his credentials. Also, Catherine mentioned how the whole systems theory really influenced things that we do. On risks of minimizing or eliminating family and religion from public policy is the definition of family can be destroyed. Once we take religion out of everything, there is no reason to turn towards God, and our whole world will suffer. There will be way more moral relativism. The children are who will suffer, or society and economics will just go downhill. Fathers and mothers both need to help raise and teach children. It makes one group feel like they are better than others to help like they know it all when it comes to raising a child. So we really need to keep the family intact with a father and mother raising children in righteousness and stand up for that. Think of the question, where have you been? He was just one person, Professor Wilkins, and we are also just one person, but we can be an advocate. We can have a voice in our own family, church, community. We can be informed on bills and issues that are being addressed in the government. Just like he went back and recruited his students who had certain gifts, we too have gifts that can help advocate for the family. So that's what I thought.
Perfect.
Awesome. That was really good.
That was
Yep.
a lot.
That was great.
It was a long week.
Yeah, it's been a long day. So,
Thank you guys for meeting later.
yes, thank
Sure.
you.
Okay, I'll post it on our discussion board.
Okay.
Okay.
And next week we do our speeches.
Oh, yeah. I noticed that.
Do you guys
Exciting.
know if it's supposed to be 5 or 7 minutes? I found it different on both of the work. Do you know? Okay.
I don't know.
Don't worry about it next week.
As long as you're between 5 and 7, I'm sure it'll be great.
Okay. All right. Thanks, you guys.
Okay, see you guys later.
Have a good week.
You too.
Thank you too.
Bye.
Bye.